They ignored her existence, a 22-year-old waitress eating garbage to survive. But the 487-year-old vampire king discovered her clutching a locket that should have burned her alive. In 36 hours, she'd learned she wasn't human at all. She was a weapon he forged from his dead wife and daughter's ashes. This is how she became the Eclipse. The clock struck midnight in the grand ballroom of Nightborn Estate, and Seraphine Ashenvale was invisible. Not literally. Her body existed in 3 dimensions. She wore the regulation black dress and stained white apron of the catering staff. Her hands carried silver platters heavy with delicacies she'd never tasted. Her feet ached in shoes 2 sizes too small, purchased from a thrift store that smelled like mothballs and broken dreams. But to the vampires swirling across the marble floor in their silks and their jewels and their immortal arrogance, she might as well have been air. They didn't see her when she refilled their crystal goblets with blood so dark it looked like wine aged in oak barrels from another century. They didn't hear her when she murmured apologies for existing in their peripheral vision. They certainly didn't notice when she pressed herself against the damask wallpaper to let them pass, holding her breath, making herself small, invisible. The word tasted like copper on her tongue, like the penny she'd found on the street yesterday and clutched in her palm for 3 blocks, debating whether it was worth the effort to add to the jar under her mattress. The bar that currently held $4.63. The jar that determined whether she ate this week or paid the overdue electric bill. She'd chosen the bill. Which is why, at 12:03 in the morning, Seraphine found herself slipping through the servants' entrance, past the bustling kitchen where chefs who'd been dead since the French Revolution worked with mechanical precision, and into the narrow hallway that led to the storage pantries. Her stomach cramped, sharp, insistent, the kind of hunger that made your vision blur at the edges and your hands shake when you tried to hold still. 3 days. 3 days since she'd eaten anything more substantial than the heel of stale bread she'd found in the staff room trash. 3 days since the estate manager had docked her pay for breaking a plate. An accident, a genuine accident. But accidents didn't matter when you were nobody. The pantry door opened with a whisper. Inside, the darkness smelled like rosemary and old meat and the faint sweetness of fruit beginning to turn. Seraphine didn't turn on the light, couldn't risk it. Instead, she felt her way past the shelves of linens and silver polish to the back corner, where she knew they kept the waste bins. The bins where the vampire's uneaten food went to rot. Her fingers found the cold metal edge. She lifted the lid, and there, wrapped in linen stained with grease and wine, she found it. A pheasant leg, cold. The skin congealed and gray, but intact, whole, real. She pulled it free with trembling hands, set it on the cleanest patch of floor she could find. Went back to the bin, found a pear. Bruised so badly half of it had gone brown and soft, but the other half still held firm. A feast. She sank to the floor, cross-legged, and brushed the dust from the pheasant skin with the corner of her apron. Her mother would have been horrified. Her mother, who'd died 17 years ago in a charity hospital bed, whispering words Seraphine still didn't understand. Keep it safe. Keep it hidden. When he finds you, you'll know. Seraphine pushed the memory away. Lifted the pheasant leg to her lips. Bit down. The meat was tough, gamey, but it was protein. It was survival. It was mercy in a world that had offered her precious little. She was halfway through her second bite when the shadow fell across the pantry floor. Seraphine froze. The shadow didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there in the doorway, blocking the thin strip of light from the hallway beyond. Slowly, so slowly her neck muscles screamed in protest, she raised her head. The man stood 6'3", maybe 6'4". He wore black. Not the practical black of the serving staff, but the kind of black that cost more than Seraphine would earn in a year. Tailored, silk. The kind of fabric that whispered when he breathed. His face could have been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw so defined it looked like it could cut glass. Hair the color of a raven's wing. Swept back from a forehead that had never known the sun. And his eyes. Red. Not the red of burst blood vessels or infection, the red of rubies, of wine held up to candlelight, of something old and dangerous and not quite human. Casimir Nightborn, the vampire king. Seraphine's heart hammered against her ribs like a bird trying to break free from a cage made of bone. She knew the penalty for theft. Everyone knew. The estate manager had made it very clear on her first day. Steal from the Nightborn family and you'll lose more than your job. She didn't move. Didn't drop the pheasant leg, didn't scramble to her feet and beg for mercy. Instead, she looked directly into those crimson eyes and heard herself say, Please don't take it away. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Quiet, but not weak. It was already in the trash. I just dusted it off. The silence stretched. Heavy, suffocating. Then Casimir Nightborn spoke, and his voice was impossibly deep. The kind of voice that vibrated through your sternum and settled in the base of your spine. It is garbage. Not cruel, not mocking, just stating a fact. Seraphine's fingers tightened on the cold meat. She felt the grease slick against her palm, felt the desperation clawing up her throat, felt something else too, something that might have been dignity if she'd had any left to claim. No, my lord, she met his gaze, didn't look away. To you, it is garbage. To me, it is the only mercy I have tasted in 3 days. Something flickered across his face, too fast to name. Then it was gone, replaced by that marble stillness. He stepped into the pantry. The space was small, designed for storage, not people. When he entered, the walls seemed to close in. The air grew colder. Seraphine's breath misted in front of her face. He crouched down, slowly, deliberately, until his face was level with hers. Up close, she could see details the shadows had hidden. The way his skin had no pores, no imperfections. The way his pupils contracted when he looked at her, like a predator focusing on prey. The way he didn't breathe. Not the way humans breathed, with the rise and fall of the chest, but in these long, controlled pauses that made you wonder if he needed air at all. The pheasant is overcooked, he said. His gaze dropped to the meat in her hands, then back to her face. The chef has been losing his touch for a century. Seraphine's jaw tightened. It tastes like survival to me. A heartbeat of silence. Then Casimir Nightborn did something she didn't expect. He smiled. Not a full smile, just the barest curve at the corner of his mouth. But it transformed his face, made him look less like a statue and more like something that remembered being alive. What is your name, little thief? Seraphine Ashenvale. A name for an angel. His head tilted, studying her. And yet here you are, eating garbage in the dark. She lifted her chin. Angels fall, my lord, and when they hit the ground, they get hungry. This time his smile reached his eyes. Just barely, just enough. He extended his hand. His fingers were long, elegant, tipped with nails manicured to perfection. No calluses, no scars. The hand of someone who'd never worked a day in 400 years. Stand up, Seraphine. She hesitated, eyed his hand like it might be a trap. I'm not on the menu, am I? Not tonight. That almost smile again. Tonight I find myself bored with perfection. I wish to dine with someone who understands the value of a bruised pear. He pulled her to her feet in one smooth motion. She was light, too light, 22 years old, and she weighed maybe 110 pounds soaking wet. Her bones felt sharp beneath the cheap fabric of her dress. As she stood, something fell from her apron pocket. It hit the floor with a metallic clink that seemed too loud in the small space. Both of them looked down. The locket lay on the stone floor, catching the dim light from the hallway. It was small, tarnished, the kind of silver that had oxidized over decades of neglect. But even through the grime, you could see the craftsmanship, the delicate filigree work, the crest etched into the surface. Casimir went very still. Not the stillness of before, the practiced, controlled stillness of an apex predator at rest. This was different. This was the stillness of something that had just recognized danger. He bent down, picked up the locket, held it up to the light. His face had gone blank, empty, but his hand trembled, just slightly, just enough. Where did you get this? His voice had changed, gone flat, cold. The warmth from before, that hint of amusement, vanished like it had never existed. Seraphine's mouth went dry. It was my mother's. She died when I was 5, told me to keep it safe. Your mother. He turned the locket over in his palm. His thumb traced the crest. What was her name? I don't know. I was in foster care after she died. They said she was a Jane Doe. No identification. No family. Casimir looked up at her. Those red eyes were no longer amused. They were sharp, calculating, dangerous. This crest belongs to House Nightborn. This specific design was used in the year 1624 and discontinued 1625. I know because I ordered it discontinued after my wife died. He stood, stepped closer, close enough that Seraphine could feel the cold radiating from his skin. This locket is forged from sun silver. It burns vampires upon contact. Yet you hold it, and I touched you, and neither of us burned. His hand shot out fast, too fast for her to dodge. He grabbed her wrist, pressed the locket against her palm, closed her fingers around it. Nothing happened. No burning, No smoke, no pain. Casimir's jaw clenched. Do you know why? Seraphine shook her head. Her heart was doing that thing again. That wild, terrified flutter. He placed his other hand on her chest, right over her heart. Flat, firm. Because the magic is dormant. It sleeps, like you. He leaned in, close enough that she could see the red in his eyes wasn't uniform. It had depths, layers. Like looking into a pool of blood with light shining through. Your heartbeat, he whispered. 76 beats per minute. Specific arrhythmia. Every seventh beat comes 3 milliseconds late. His hand pressed harder. Not painful, but insistent. I know this rhythm. I listened to it for 5 years. I held my daughter every night and counted her heartbeats until she fell asleep. 76 per minute, every seventh beat, 3 milliseconds late. He pulled back, just enough to look her in the eye. Tell me, Seraphine Ashenvale, how do you have my dead daughter's heartbeat? The world tilted. Seraphine felt her knees buckle. Would have fallen if Casimir hadn't caught her elbow. Steadied her. I don't know what you're talking about, she managed. I'm nobody. I was born in a tenement in the lower ward. I work double shifts to pay rent. I have a cat named Pepper who eats better than I do. Implanted memories. His voice had gone quiet, thoughtful. Stitched into your mind to keep the power dormant. You're insane. Perhaps, he released her, stepped back, ran a hand through his hair. But I am also 487 years old. I have seen impossible things become possible. I have watched the dead rise and the living fall. I have learned not to dismiss what my instincts tell me is true. He gestured to the door. Come with me. No, that wasn't a request. I don't care if it's an order. I'm not going anywhere with you. She backed toward the pantry's rear wall. Her spine hit the shelves. Glass jars rattled. You're going to lock me up. Experiment on me. Kill me to see if I'm what you think I am. Casimir's expression softened. Just slightly. If I wanted to kill you, little thief, you'd already be dead. What I want is answers. And I think, whether you know it or not, you want them too. Before she could respond, the pantry door swung open wider. A man stepped through. Broader than Casimir. Built like he'd been carved from stone and scar tissue. His face had the kind of ruggedness that came from hard living and harder fights. His eyes glowed amber in the dim light. Not red, but warm. Almost kind. Almost. My lord. His voice was gravel dragged across concrete. Lady Vivian is asking for you. The High Council grows impatient. Casimir didn't look at the newcomer. Kept his gaze on Seraphine. Thaddeus, take her. To the dungeons? Thaddeus, because apparently that was his name, reached for the silver cuffs at his belt. No, Casimir's voice cracked like a whip. To my private chambers. Feed her, bathe her, give her clean clothes. He turned then, looked at Thaddeus directly. And Thane, if a single hair on her head is harmed, if she so much as stumbles on the stairs, I will mount your head on the estate gates before sunrise. Thaddeus, Thane, went very still. Understood, my lord. Seraphine tried to fight. She really did. But Thane was built like a wall, and when he lifted her gently but firmly, it was like trying to fight granite. He carried her out of the pantry, through the bustling kitchen where the dead chefs pretended not to see, and into the cool night air of the courtyard. A carriage waited. Black lacquer, silver fixtures, horses with eyes that glowed like burning coals. Thane set her inside. Casimir followed, sat across from her in the velvet seats. The carriage lurched forward. Seraphine pressed herself into the corner. You're making a mistake. Possibly. Casimir lit a thin cigarette. The flame illuminated his face in sharp relief. But that locket is forged from sun silver, blessed by a dying star. It burns any vampire who touches it. Yet when I touched you while you held it, neither of us burned. He exhaled smoke. It curled in the enclosed space. Do you know why? Because it's fake. Because the magic is dormant. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes locked on hers. It sleeps, like you, waiting for something to wake it. The ride blurred, dark trees, moonlight, the rhythmic thunder of hooves on cobblestone. When they arrived, the scale of Nightborn Citadel stole what little breath Seraphine had left. It wasn't a house, it was a Gothic cathedral of excess. Spires clawed at the moon. Gargoyles perched on every corner, their stone eyes watching. The walls were black stone, veined with something that glittered even in darkness. Thane carried her through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past tapestries older than America, past portraits of men and women whose eyes followed your movement, past rooms so vast you could fit entire apartment buildings inside. They stopped at a door carved from a single piece of ebony. Thane set her down, stepped back, took up position beside the doorframe like a sentinel. "Inside," he said quietly. "Maids will tend to you. Don't try to run. I'm faster." Seraphine wanted to snap back, wanted to show defiance. But she was exhausted, terrified, and despite everything, curious. She went inside. The room was larger than any space she'd ever inhabited. The bed alone could sleep 6 people. The windows were floor to ceiling, draped in crimson velvet. A fireplace big enough to stand in crackled with flames that gave off no smoke. And in the center of the room, a table, laden with food, real food, fresh food, roast duck skin crackling and golden, grapes the size of plums, warm bread that steamed when you tore it open, butter, honey, cheese that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Her stomach growled, loud, desperate, but she didn't move toward it. Instead, she stood very still as 2 maids entered. They didn't speak, didn't meet her eyes, just guided her to the adjoining bathing room where a copper tub waited, filled with water that steamed and smelled like lavender and salt. They stripped her of her rags. She let them. She was too tired to fight. They scrubbed the grease from her skin, washed her hair until it felt soft instead of brittle, dressed her in silk so fine it felt like water against her skin. Then they left. Seraphine sat at the table, stared at the food, didn't eat, couldn't. Because nothing in this world was free. And she'd learned young that when someone offered you a feast, they were fattening you for slaughter. The door opened. Casimir entered. He'd shed his formal cloak, wore a simple white shirt now, unbuttoned at the throat. His feet were bare against the stone floor. He looked less like a king, more like a man who'd lived too long and seen too much. "Eat." He poured himself a glass of wine, sat across from her. "I'm not hungry." "Liar." But his voice was gentle, almost kind. "Your body is screaming for sustenance. Eat, Seraphine. You'll need your strength." "For what? The interrogation?" "For the truth." He set down his wine, pointed to the far wall. Seraphine hadn't noticed it before. The portrait, massive, oil on canvas, darkened by centuries of grime. It depicted a family, a man, a woman, a child. They stood in a field of sunflowers. The light was golden, perfect. The kind of light that only exists in memory and dreams. Seraphine stood, walked toward it. Her legs trembled. The woman in the portrait didn't look like her. Different hair, different Noah, different everything. But the child had her eyes, gray, storm gray. The child had her chin, stubborn, defiant. The child had her hands, small, delicate, with fingers just a little too long. But the man in the painting, the man was Casimir, not the vampire king, not the marble statue, not the predator with red eyes and eternal cold. The man in the painting was human. He was smiling. A genuine, sun-drenched smile that transformed his entire face. His hand rested on the woman's shoulder. Protective, loving, he looked happy. He looked alive. "That's..." Seraphine's voice broke. Casimir stood, walked to her side, stared up at the portrait with an expression she couldn't name. "My wife, Liana, and my daughter, Aria." His jaw clenched. "Painted in 1623, 1 year before the plague came. What happened to them?" "I tried to save them." His hands curled into fists. "The plague burned through our village, took everyone. I was newly turned, still learning what I was. I thought if I gave them my blood, they'd survive. They'd be like me, immortal." He closed his eyes. But the blood didn't take. It drove them mad. They screamed, clawed at their own skin, begged me to make it stop. A single tear tracked down his cheek, not clear, red, blood. "So I did. I ended it. I buried them in the garden, and I swore I'd never create another vampire again." He turned to her, grabbed her wrist, placed her hand against his chest, right over where his heart should have been beating. "So tell me, Seraphine, why do you have my daughter's heartbeat?" The heartbeat against her palm was non-existent. His chest was still, silent, a cage of death. But her own pulse thundered, so loud she could feel it in her teeth. "I don't know." She pulled her hand back. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was born in a tenement. My mother was a washerwoman. I'm nobody." "Adoptive mother?" He waved a hand, dismissive. "The woman who raised you, your real mother, your biological mother, she gave you that locket for a reason. She was insane. She died raving. Or she was protecting you." Before Seraphine could respond, the heavy oak doors slammed open. A woman swept in, tall, pale, Beautiful in the way a venomous snake is beautiful, she wore emerald silk that clung to every curve. Her hair was so black it absorbed light. Her eyes were red, like Casimir's, but colder, crueler. My king. Her voice dripped honey laced with arsenic. The council is in an uproar. You abandoned the gala to play with your food. And now you bring a stray into the royal wing. Casimir's expression hardened. She's not food, Vivian. She smells like dishwater and treason. Vivian circled Seraphine like a shark scenting blood. And she carries a trinket that reeks of forbidden magic. Her taloned fingers reach for the locket around Seraphine's neck. Don't touch it. Seraphine's hand shot up. Protective. Instinctive. Vivian laughed. Sharp. Cutting. Or what? You'll splash me with soap? Her fingers grazed the silver. The reaction was instantaneous. Light exploded from the locket. Not soft, not gentle. Blinding white light that carved shadows into the walls and made the air itself scream. It didn't burn Seraphine, but Vivian shrieked, stumbled backward. Smoke hissed from her fingertips. Her beautiful face twisted into something demonic. Fangs descended, eyes went pure crimson. Witch! Thane was in the room before the word finished echoing, sword drawn, placing himself between the women. But Casimir didn't move. He stood frozen, staring at the locket, which was glowing now, steady, pulsing, like a heartbeat made of light. It's not a trap, he whispered. His voice sounded far away, distant. It's not dormant anymore. He turned to Seraphine. His face was pale, paler than she'd thought possible for someone already dead. That locket has been sealed for 400 years. Only blood of the maker could activate it. Seraphine looked down at her hands, at the glowing silver between her fingers. She felt a sharp pain lance through her temples. A rush of something that wasn't memory, but felt like it. Like déjà vu written in fire and frost, fire consuming a village. Snow falling on a battlefield. A lullaby hummed in a voice too deep to be her own. Casimir's voice. She gasped, staggered. I want to go home. You are home. Casimir caught her before she fell, but there was no comfort in his grip. Only a terrible, possessive certainty. My lord. Thane's voice cut through the case, tense, urgent. Lord Vincent Blackwood has arrived. He heard the magical blast. He demands entry. Casimir's face went blank. Empty. The mask of a king sliding back into place. Vincent Blackwood, his greatest rival. A warlord who'd spent 3 centuries trying to dethrone the Nightborn line. If Vincent saw this, if he saw a human wielding sun magic, it would be war. Hide her! Casimir's voice was ice. Thane, take her to the ossuary of echoes. Seal the doors. No one enters. No one. My lord, that's a tomb. She's mortal. The cold alone. Take her. The windows rattled. Dust drifted from the vaulted ceiling. Thane grabbed Seraphine's arm, not gently this time, with the urgency of a soldier following orders. Come, now. As they rushed toward a hidden passage behind the fireplace, Seraphine looked back. She saw Casimir turn to face the doors, saw him compose himself, saw him put on the face of a king who feared nothing. But as she stepped into darkness, the locket grew warm against her skin. Not burning, just warm. And it whispered, not a sound, not words, but a feeling, a pull, a knowledge that settled into her bones like muscle memory. Down, it seemed to say, down to the roots, down to where the dead sleep and secrets grow like flowers from graves. The passage swallowed them. Stone walls pressed close. The air grew colder with every step. Behind them, she heard the great doors open. Heard a voice, male, smooth, dangerous, echo through the royal chambers. Casimir, what a delightful commotion. Do tell me what's worth abandoning your own gala. The passage door ground shut, and Seraphine descended into the dark, clutching a locket that pulsed with light and memory, and something that might have been her own heartbeat, or might have been someone else's, someone who died 400 years ago, someone who impossibly was starting to remember. The stairs descended into cold, not the pleasant chill of autumn air or the bite of winter wind. This was the cold of places where warmth had never existed, where the sun had never touched, where the living were never meant to tread. Seraphine's breath misted in front of her face. Each exhale hung in the air like a ghost before dissolving into nothing. Thane led the way. His torch cast dancing shadows on walls so old the stone had worn smooth. His footsteps echoed, steady, relentless. Seraphine stumbled on the uneven steps. Her silk slippers, so fine, so delicate, offered no grip, no protection. She caught herself on the wall. The stone was damp beneath her palm. slick with something she didn't want to name. Down, down, down. The locket pulsed against her chest, warm, insistent, like a second heartbeat keeping time with her own. How much farther? Her voice sounded small in the vast dark. Thane didn't turn. Far enough that no one will hear you scream. Comforting. Wasn't meant to be. They reached the bottom, the ossuary of echoes spread before them like the ribcage of some ancient god. Vaulted ceilings stretched up into darkness the torchlight couldn't penetrate. Columns of bone, actual bone, vertebrae stacked 20 feet high, supported arches carved with names in languages Seraphine didn't recognize. And everywhere, the dead. Not corpses, not exactly. These were relics, skulls arranged in careful patterns along the walls. Femurs crossed like swords, rib cages displayed like trophies. Some were human-sized. Others belonged to creatures that shouldn't exist. Dragon bones. She recognized them from books, from fairy tales. Massive skulls with eye sockets big enough to crawl through, spines that coiled across the floor like petrified serpents. This is where they keep their history, Thane said quietly. He set the torch in an iron sconce. The flame caught, spread. Other torches along the walls ignited in sequence, one after another until the entire chamber glowed with firelight. Every vampire who's ever served House Nightborn. Every creature they've conquered. Every enemy they've destroyed. He gestured to the bones. All of it ends here. Seraphine wrapped her arms around herself. The silk nightgown they'd given her offered no warmth, no protection. Why am I here? Because my lord wants you alive. Thane pulled a heavy fur cloak from a stone alcove, dropped it around her shoulders. And Vincent Blackwood wants you dissected to see what makes you tick. He moved toward the iron door they'd entered through. It was massive, 6 inches thick, reinforced with silver bands that gleamed in the torchlight. Stay here, don't make a sound. Vincent has ears like a bat and a temper like a volcano. The door began to swing shut. Wait, Seraphine's voice cracked. How long? Thane paused. His amber eyes met hers. For a moment, just a moment, she saw something that might have been pity. As long as it takes. The door closed with a boom that echoed through the chamber like thunder. Then silence. Complete. Absolute. The kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums and made you hear things that weren't there. Seraphine was alone. She huddled against the dragon's ribcage, pulling the fur cloak tight. Her hands shook, from cold, yes, but also from fear, from exhaustion, from the sheer impossibility of everything that had happened in the last 3 hours. She reached into the pocket of the nightgown, found the piece of bread she'd shoved there before the maids had taken her old clothes. It was crushed now, hard, but it was food. Survival first, always survival first. She bit into it, chewed mechanically, swallowed, and heard something move in the darkness. Not the skitter of rats, not the whisper of wind through cracks. This was deliberate, purposeful, the sound of something that had been waiting. Who's there? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. No answer, just the scrape of something dragging across stone. Coming closer. Seraphine scrambled to her feet, grabbed a loose femur from the floor. It was heavy, solid, a weapon if she needed one. Show yourself. A figure emerged from the shadows between 2 columns of bone. Not a vampire, not human, something in between. The keeper was tall, impossibly tall. Its body seemed wrong, like someone had stretched skin over a frame that didn't quite fit. The skin hung loose in places, tight in others. Its eyes were milky white, blind, but it turned its head toward her with perfect accuracy. When it spoke, its voice was the rasp of wind through a crypt. He lies. Seraphine raised the bone. Stay back. The king lies, child. The keeper moved closer. Its joints creaked, popped, like old wood settling. He says you are his daughter reborn. But the locket does not remember a daughter. It pointed one skeletal finger at the silver around her neck. The locket remembers a weapon. Seraphine's grip tightened on her makeshift club. What are you? I am the keeper of echoes. I tend the dead. I remember what the living wish to forget. It tilted its head, studying her with those blind eyes. And I remember the night Casimir Nightborn brought the impossible into being. I don't understand. You were not born, girl. The keeper's voice dropped, became almost gentle. You were forged. The word hit her like a physical blow. That's insane. Is it? The keeper moved to a stone table against the far wall. Its fingers, too long, too thin, traced patterns in the dust. The king is master of many arts. necromancy, alchemy, the science of grief. It looked back at her. When the plague took his wife and child, he did not simply mourn, he experimented. Seraphine's stomach turned. No. Yes. The keeper's voice was relentless now, matter of fact. He took their ashes, mixed them with sun silver blessed by a dying star, added blood from his own veins, added something else, something older, something that should never have been touched. What? The essence of Seraphine the Devourer, the World Eater, a cosmic entity that existed before your world had form. The chamber seemed to tilt. You're lying. I am the keeper. I do not lie. I remember. It moved closer, close enough that she could smell it. Dust and decay and something underneath, something chemical. Wrong. He tried to bake a miracle in the kiln of his grief. He wanted to resurrect his family. Instead, he created you. I'm human. I have memories, a childhood, a mother who raised me. Implants. The keeper waved a dismissive hand. Memories stitched into your mind to keep the power dormant. Your mother was a construct. Your childhood a carefully woven fiction. All of it designed to make you believe you are small, weak, human. Seraphine's legs buckled. She caught herself on the dragon's rib. Why? Because the king learned what he created, and he was terrified. The keeper's blind eyes seemed to bore into her. You are not a girl who happens to have power. You are power that was given the shape of a girl. The hunger you feel, the gnawing, constant hunger, it is not for food. It leaned in. It is for fuel. You are a star, child. And when a star is starved long enough, it goes supernova. Above them, the castle groaned. A tremor ran through the stone. Dust drifted down from the vaulted ceiling. The keeper looked up. He is testing the wards. Vincent Blackwood. He smells the sun on you. He wants to see if you burn. I need to get out of here. There is no out. There is only what you are. And what you are is... The iron door exploded inward, not opened. Exploded. The 6-inch thick metal tore off its hinges and slammed into the far wall with a sound like the world ending. A figure stepped through the smoking wreckage. Vincent Blackwood was beautiful the way a blade is beautiful. Sharp, precise, deadly. His hair was the color of spun gold. His eyes were entirely black. No whites, no irises, just void. He wore shadows like other men wore cloaks. They writhed around him, living, hungry. So his voice slid over her skin like oil. Casimir hides his dirty secrets in the basement. How predictable. The keeper melted back into darkness. Gone. Abandoned her. Seraphine stood alone, clutching a bone, facing a creature that looked like a goose carved from nightmare. You feel it, don't you? Vincent stepped over the ruined door. His footsteps made no sound. The hum, the vibration. You are a walking supernova, my dear. He circled her, predatory, patient. And Casimir has kept you starving in the dark because he knows what happens when a star is allowed to feed. Stay back. Seraphine raised the locket. It glowed brighter, pulsing in time with her racing heart. Vincent smiled, teeth like needles, rows and rows of them. I am not that fool, Vivian. I do not fear the light. He lunged, fast, too fast. Seraphine didn't think, didn't plan. She screamed. And the locket didn't just glow, it screamed with her. A shockwave of pure force erupted from her center. Not magic, not light, something fundamental. Primal. Gravity. The bones flew, thousands of them. Centuries of dead launched into the air like shrapnel. The dragon's skull shattered, the columns collapsed. The keeper shrieked and dissolved into dust. Vincent was blasted backward. His body hit the stone wall with enough force to crack the masonry. The ceiling began to collapse. Massive stones rained down. One struck Vincent, then another. Then 10, 20, 100. He disappeared beneath an avalanche of rock and bone and 400 years of accumulated death. Seraphine fell to her knees. The shockwave hadn't come from the locket. The locket was cold against her skin, inert. The heat was coming from her hands. She looked down. Her palms glowed, not with reflected light. They were generating it, producing it from inside. And they were turning black, not burnt, not damaged, black like the void between stars. Like light couldn't escape them, like they were holes in reality, pulling everything in. She stared at them, watched the blackness spread up her wrists, her forearms, watched reality bend around her fingers, and remembered. Not implanted memories, not the fake childhood in the tenement. Real memories, ancient memories. She remembered being vast, enormous, cosmic. She remembered swallowing moons whole, draining their light until nothing remained but empty rock tumbling through space. She remembered drinking oceans, feeling them pour down her throat, hearing the whales sing their death songs as the water disappeared and they suffocated on dry sand. She remembered being called Seraphine, but not Seraphine Ashenvale, Seraphine the Devourer, the World Eater, the Eclipse. No, her voice broke. No, 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 no. She tried to stop the glow, tried to pull the power back in, but it was like trying to stop a dam from breaking after the first crack appeared. The blackness reached her elbows. The air around her hands warped, twisted. Things got pulled toward her. Small things, pebbles, dust, a femur that rattled across the floor and stuck to her palm like a magnet. She was eating the world, not with her mouth, with her existence. Everything went dark. She woke to whiteness, not the warm white of sunlight or the soft white of clouds. This was the sterile white of hospitals, of laboratories, of places where things got examined and dissected and broken down into component parts. Seraphine tried to sit up. Her body screamed in protest. Every muscle felt like it had been pulled apart and stitched back together wrong. She was in a bed, white satin sheets, white walls, white ceiling. The only color came from the windows. They were covered in thick crimson glass. The light that filtered through was red, bloody. It bathed everything in a suffocating hue. And beside the bed, in a velvet wingback chair, sat Casimir. He looked wrecked. The marble perfection was gone. His face was drawn. Purple circles bloomed under his eyes, eyes that had gone dull, like rubies left too long in the sun. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the cuffs, stained with gray stone dust and streaks of soot. He wasn't reading the book open on his knee, just staring at it, unseeing. You destroyed my ossuary. His voice was flat, empty. My ancestors are very displeased. It is difficult to rest in peace when your tibia has been thrown through a load-bearing wall. Seraphine's throat was dry, raw, like she'd been screaming. Maybe she had. Vincent, I killed him. Vincent is a 2,000-year-old warlord. Casimir finally looked at her. His gaze was heavy, ancient. You dropped a ceiling on him. It will annoy him for a week, perhaps two. He is currently regenerating somewhere in the citadel, plotting his revenge. He stood, moved to the bedside, poured water from a crystal carafe. You bought us time, not peace. He held the glass to her lips. She drank greedily. The water was cool, clear. But it did nothing for the deeper burn, the hunger. It was worse now, not the sharp pain of an empty stomach. This was a vacuum, a black hole in her center demanding to be filled. The keeper told me. Her voice cracked. He said I'm not real, that I'm a weapon you made from them. Casimir set the glass down. The crystal clinked against the nightstand, too loud in the silence. He turned his back to her, looked out the red-tinted window at the dark kingdom sprawling below. The keeper was old, his mind was rotting. A pause, but he was not entirely wrong. Seraphine felt something crack inside her chest, something that might have been hope. Tell me the truth. Casimir was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You know how they died. The plague, the failed turning, the mercy I gave them with my own hands. He turned to face her. The raw vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. What you don't know is what came after. The madness, the laboratory, the years I spent trying to undo what couldn't be undone. He walked closer, each step deliberate. I took their ashes from the garden where I'd buried them. I mixed them with sun silver blessed by a dying star. I added my own blood, and then I stole something I shouldn't have. The devourer's essence. Yes, he closed his eyes. A fragment of cosmic hunger imprisoned in the void between realms. I didn't know what she was. I only knew she was powerful enough to survive anything. I thought if I could combine that immortality with the genetic material of my family, I could create a vessel strong enough to bring their souls back. But you got me instead. I got you. He opened his eyes. They were wet, red tears gathering at the corners. A vessel of raw solar energy bound in flesh. A living fusion reactor with my daughter's heartbeat and my wife's features, but something else underneath. Something ancient. Something hungry. He fell to his knees beside the bed. When I realized what I'd created, When I understood that you were a poem waiting to detonate, I gave you false memories, put you in the human world, kept you hungry, kept you focused on survival. Because I theorized that if you never had comfort, never had peace, the cosmic power would stay dormant. Seraphine felt rage building, hot, furious. You let me starve for 22 years to keep your experiments stable. I kept you alive. His composure shattered. I watched you every day. I was the stranger who fed your cat when you had nothing. I dropped coins when you couldn't make rent, but I couldn't give you comfort, because comfort leads to contentment. And contentment wakes the hunger. And the hunger ends everything. He reached out, his hand hovered over her hair, shaking. I tried to be a father from the shadows, but I only succeeded in being your jailer. Seraphine's hand shot out, slapped his, way, hard. The sound rang through the room like a gunshot. You're not my father. Her voice was ice. You're my manufacturer. I'm a thing you built. A weapon. A mistake. She swung her legs out of bed. The room tilted. She gripped the mattress to steady herself. And now that your experiment is waking up, you're terrified. Yes. Casimir's admission was barely a whisper. I am terrified, because I know what the Devourer did before she was imprisoned. She ate realms, she consumed galaxies, she left nothing but void in her wake. He fell to his knees beside the bed, grabbed her hand, held it like a lifeline. But you are not just her. You have Arya's heart, Lyanna's soul. You are an echo of the family I lost. And even if you are just that, just an echo, you are all I have left of the sun. Seraphine looked down at him, the vampire king, the scourge of 5 continents, the creature who had lived longer than most nations, kneeling, begging, please don't leave me. I cannot lose them again. She felt something shift in her chest, not sympathy, not forgiveness, understanding. He was a father who'd lost everything and made a terrible choice trying to get it back. She was the consequence, but she was also a person who'd suffered for his choice, who'd starved, who'd been alone. Slowly, she pulled her hand free. That's the problem, Casimir. Her voice was cold, final. You think I'm the sun. You think I'm light. She held up her hands. They were still stained with void black. The darkness had spread past her elbows now, creeping up her biceps. But the sun gives, I only take. She stood. The silk nightgown hung on her frame. Too big, too fine. I'm not the sun, I'm the eclipse. The door slammed open. Thane burst in, sword drawn. His face was pale, urgent. My lord, step away from her. Casimir rose slowly. Thane, stand down. I can't. Thane's amber eyes locked on Seraphine. There was recognition there, and terror. Not again, he raised the sword. It wasn't steel, it was black glass, obsidian, carved with runes that glowed red in the bloody light. 2,000 years ago, I made a vow. His voice shook. I swore I would never let her wake, that if she ever returned, I would end her before she could end us. Casimir stepped between them. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly. Thane's grip tightened on the hilt. My lord, I have served you for 4 centuries. I have been loyal, faithful. But this I cannot allow. Thane, she is not your daughter. The roar echoed off of the walls. She is not your wife. She is not human. She is the Devourer reborn, and I killed her once to save this realm. He looked past Casimir, directly at Seraphine. Her name was Seraphine. I loved her. Before she became what she became. Before the hunger took her. His voice cracked. She was kind, gentle. She sang to dying stars to ease their passing. Tears tracked down his scarred face, and then the hunger consumed her kindness. She ate the moons of Valdria. She drank the oceans of the third realm until the whales sang to dry sand. He stepped forward. The obsidian blade hummed. I drove this sword through her heart. She smiled as she died. Said death is just a cocoon. Beloved, I will wake hungry. His amber eyes met Seraphine's void black ones. I thought she was taunting me. She was promising. Casimir's hand went to his own sword. If you attack her, you attack me. Then I attack you. Thane, don't! The door burst open again. A vampire in crimson robes stood in the doorway, ancient, withered, eyes like dying embers. The High Council demands an audience. The girl. Now. Casimir's jaw clenched. She's not ready. The entire kingdom felt the blast from the ossuary. Vincent Blackwood is regenerating but already sending messages. The council will have answers. The messenger looked at Seraphine. Bring her, or we come take her. The great hall was designed to make you feel insignificant. The ceiling stretched up into darkness. The walls were black obsidian, polished to mirror perfection, and arranged in a semicircle 20 feet above the mosaic floor sat 12 thrones. On those thrones sat the oldest vampires in existence, creatures who'd forgotten more years than most humans would ever live. Their skin was parchment. Their eyes were dying stars. They watched Seraphine with the detached interest of scientists examining a specimen. She stood in the center of the floor, flanked by Casimir on one side, Thane on the other. Both men radiated tension. She wore the black velvet dress they had given her, high-necked, long-sleeved, threaded with silver that caught the torchlight. It was beautiful. It felt like a shroud. Elder Malachi spoke first. His voice was dry leaves scraping across stone. This is irregular. A human child with the power to topple mountains. She must be studied, dissected. We must understand the mechanism. She is under my protection. Casimir's voice rang clear, strong. She is of my house. To touch her is to declare war on Nightborn. She is an abomination. Vivian's voice cut through from the gallery. She stood there, bandaged hand clutched to her chest, face twisted with hate. She is a weapon Casimir forged in secret, an illegal construct designed to overthrow this council. The murmurs grew, a roar of voices, accusations flying like arrows. Seraphine stood very still and felt the hunger. It wasn't subtle anymore. Wasn't the background ache she'd learned to ignore? This was a presence, a voice, a need so vast it made her vision blur. The ambient magic in the room, 12 ancient vampires, each one a reservoir of centuries of accumulated power, it called to her, sang to her, like a feast spread before a starving woman. Her hands began to tremble. The void-black stains pulsed. Feed, something whispered in her mind, not her voice, older, hungrier. Take it all. Silence. A new voice, deeper, colder. The great iron doors at the far end of the hall boomed open. Vincent Blackwood limped in, half his face was still regenerating, muscle fibers visible, bones showing through gaps in skin. One arm hung useless at his side, but he was smiling. He held something in his good hand, a scroll, ancient, sealed with wax. We argue about the wrong thing. His voice filled the chamber. We debate what she is. We should be debating who owns her. He unfurled the scroll with a flourish. Ancient law, Section 4, Paragraph 2. Any magical construct created within kingdom bounds without council approval is forfeit to the state. He grinned at Casimir, triumphant. She is not a person. You admitted it yourself in your journals. He pulled a leather-bound book from his coat, threw it on the floor. It landed with a heavy thud. Project Eclipse. Your words, your hand. You called her an experiment, a vessel, a construct. Vincent's black eyes gleamed. Legally, she is property, and since you made her illegally, she belongs to us. The council erupted, voices overlapping, shouting. Casimir's hand went to his sword, over my dead body. That can be arranged? Vincent snapped his fingers. From the shadows behind the thrones, 50 vampires emerged. Mercenaries, armed with crossbows loaded with silver bolts, with nets woven from blessed thread. They surrounded the floor, weapons trained on Casimir, on Thane, on Seraphine. Run! Casimir's whisper was urgent, desperate. Seraphine looked at him, at Thane, at the vampires closing in, at the council watching with cold interest, and she felt it, the hunger, not for food, not for survival, for power, for everything. The room felt small suddenly, cramped, like a cage built for something much larger than her body suggested. No, her voice came out strange, layered, like three people speaking in unison. Casimir grabbed his arm. Seraphine, listen to me. I said no. She stepped forward, past Casimir, past Thane, toward the center of the floor. The mercenaries tensed, fingers tightening on triggers. Seraphine looked at them, really looked, and she didn't see soldiers, didn't see vampires. She saw batteries, bright sparks of life and magic and accumulated power. She saw juice boxes waiting to be squeezed. She reached into the pocket of her velvet dress, found the locket, the seal that had kept her contained for 22 years, the limiter. She held it up, let it catch the light, then crushed it in her fist. The sound of breaking metal was louder than a gunshot, louder than the council's gasps, louder than Casimir's shout of denial. It was the sound of a dam breaking. The air sucked out of the room. Every torch died simultaneously. The magical lights flickered and went dark. Absolute blackness for one heartbeat. Two. Then Seraphine opened her eyes. They weren't gray anymore. They were black holes. Void dark centers rimmed with coronas of blinding white fire. When she spoke, her voice was a chorus. 1,000 voices. The accumulated weight of galaxies and eons and hunger that predated creation. You want to know what I am? The stones in the walls began to vibrate. I am what happens when you try to cage a star. She raised her hand. I am the burnout. And she didn't blast them. She inhaled. Streams of light, life force, magic, the essence of centuries, began to rip from the mercenaries, from the council members, from Vincent. They screamed, their skin grayed, their youth withered, their power drained like water circling a drain, into her. Casimir watched in horror, shielded his eyes from the blinding light. Thane grabbed his shoulder, dragged him back. If she feeds too much, she won't just kill them. She'll detonate the entire mountain. But he couldn't look away from Seraphine, from the girl he'd tried to protect, who was becoming the thing he'd feared most. The eclipse, the world eater, the end of everything. And she was so hungry. The Great Hall was no longer a room. It was the throat of an erupting volcano. The air itself screamed. Stone cracked. The ancient mosaic floor buckled under forces it was never meant to bear. And at the center of it all, Seraphine hovered. Not floating, not flying. Her feet hung inches above the broken tiles held aloft by gravity that had forgotten which way was down. Her body was a silhouette carved from absolute void. Black, blacker than the space between stars. Light bent around her, warped, died trying to reach her, but her edges burned with coronas of white fire so bright they seared after images into the eyes of anyone foolish enough to look directly. The streams of stolen vitality poured into her. Not gentle, not kind, like rivers of liquid light forced through a funnel too small to contain them. The mercenaries collapsed first, their bodies aging in fast forward, skin turning gray, hair falling out, bones becoming brittle and snapping under their own weight. They didn't scream for long. The council elders lasted longer. They had centuries of accumulated power. It took time to drain that much life, but time was something Seraphine had in abundance now. She drank them like wine, slow, savoring. Elder Malachi reached toward her, his parchment skin peeling away like old wallpaper, his dying eyes pleading. Please. The word was ash on his tongue. Seraphine didn't hear him, couldn't hear him. The hunger was a roar that drowned out everything else. More. The voice in her head was hers and not hers. Ancient, primordial. Take it all. The world is just an appetizer. The stars are dessert. Vincent Blackwood tried to run. His regenerating body wasn't fast enough. The streams of light caught him, wrapped around him like chains. He screamed, actually screamed, a sound of pure terror from a creature who hadn't felt fear in 2 millennia. His golden hair turned white, then gray, then fell out in clumps. His perfect skin cracked. His void black eyes faded to milky white. You'll regret this, he gasped. When you remember what you are, when the hunger takes everything you love, you'll... The light consumed the rest of his words. Casimir stood at the edge of the devastation. His white shirt was torn. Blood, his own though he hardly bled anymore, stained the fabric. His face was pale, paler than she'd ever seen it. He wasn't looking at the carnage, wasn't watching his enemies fall. He was watching her. And his eyes were breaking. Thane grabbed his shoulder, shook him. We have to stop her. If she feeds too much, the feedback will detonate. I know. Casimir's voice was hollow. Move. He shrugged off Thane's grip, started walking. Not away from Seraphine, toward her. My lord, no! Thane lunged, tried to tackle him, but Casimir was faster. 487 years of fighting made you good at dodging. He kept walking, into the maelstrom, into the screaming wind and the dying light and the gravity that crushed everything it touched. His bones began to compress. He felt his ribs creaking, his spine bending. He kept walking. Seraphine! His voice was lost in the case, drowned in the roar of world's ending. He tried again, louder, forcing air through lungs that weren't designed to breathe. Seraphine! Nothing. She didn't hear, didn't see. She was lost, drowning in hunger, in power. In the terrible, intoxicating rush of finally being full after 22 years of starvation. Casimir reached the edge of the gravity well. One more step and it would crush him, grind his bones to powder. He took the step. The pressure was immense, like being at the bottom of an ocean made of lead. His knees buckled, his vision grayed at the edges. But he reached out, grabbed her hand, the one that was still partially human, still had skin instead of void, and shouted one word with everything he had left. Sarah! The sound of her name, her human name, the one given to a girl who ate leftovers in pantries and worried about rent, cut through the static. The blackness in her eyes flickered, just for a microsecond. Gray surfaced, broke through the void like a drowning person breaking the surface of water. She saw him, Casimir, bleeding, broken, but standing there, holding her hand, refusing to let go. She saw Thane beyond him, on his knees, sword fallen, weeping. She saw the council chamber, the bodies, the devastation. What had been vampires were now husks, empty shells, drained. What had been Vincent Blackwood was a pile of dust and designer clothes. And she saw her hands. They were dissolving. Not flesh anymore, not matter. Just concentrated hunger given temporary form. Terror flooded back in, cold, human, real. I'm eating people. Her voice cracked, broke, became just hers again. Just a 22-year-old girl horrified by what she'd become. I'm a monster. The realization hit like a physical blow. The hunger inverted, turned inward, began eating her instead. She shrieked, pure despair, pure self-loathing, and gathered all the energy around her, every stream of stolen life, every drop of power, and pushed, not at them, away from them. She launched herself upward, through the vaulted ceiling, through stone and slate and 400 years of architecture. The impact shattered the roof, sent chunks of masonry the size of carriages tumbling down. But she didn't stop. She rocketed into the crimson sky like a reverse meteor, trailing light, trailing screams, escaping the only way she knew how, by running. The silence that followed was deafening. Thane collapsed, gasping, clutching broken ribs that had cracked when the gravity released. His face was wet, tears or blood or both. Casimir stood in the center of the destroyed hall, swaying. His entire body was bruised, purple and black, crushed blood vessels mapping his skin like terrible art. But he was alive. He looked up, through the hole in the ceiling, at the night sky beyond, and whispered, no. Then louder, no, 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 no. He moved, stumbled, caught himself on a fallen pillar. Thane, get up. My lord, I can't. Get up! The command cracked like lightning. Thane hauled himself to his feet through sheer force of will. Casimir was already moving. Toward the stairs, toward the tower, toward the highest point in the citadel, the spire of echoes, where kings went to brood, to think, to watch their kingdom and feel the weight of eternity pressing down, where apparently cosmic entities went to have breakdowns. The spire was a needle of black stone that pierced the cloud layer. Gargoyles lined the edges. Their stone eyes had watched 500 years of history unfold. Now they watched the end. Seraphine stood on the precipice. The wind whipped her black velvet dress, tore at her hair, but she didn't feel it. She felt full, and she felt starving. The paradox was tearing her apart. The energy she'd drained from the council churned inside her. Too much, too fast, like swallowing magma and expecting it to settle peacefully. It demanded release, demanded more, demanded everything. Below, the kingdom was in chaos. The sky was darkening. The eternal crimson clouds that had choked the realm for 4 centuries were swirling, forming a funnel, a drain, directly above her. The fabric of reality was thinning. She could see through it, see the void beyond, the nothing that existed before creation, the hunger that waited patiently to reclaim everything. It's beautiful, isn't it? The voice came from behind her. Ragged, wet, Seraphine spun. Vincent Blackwood pulled himself onto the spire platform. What was left of him? Half his face was burned away, bones showing through. One arm was missing entirely. His clothes were shredded. He'd clawed his way from beneath the ossuary rubble, dragged himself through corridors, driven by pure hatred and the manic certainty that if he was going to die, he'd take everything with him. But he was laughing. The sound was broken, manic, the laugh of someone who'd lost everything and found it hilarious. The symmetry of it all, he dragged himself forward, leaving a trail of black blood. In his remaining hand, he held something, a sphere, brass, covered in gears and symbols that hurt to look at. It pulsed with sickening green light. You're going to eat it all, aren't you? and I'm going to help you. Seraphine backed toward the edge. Stay away from me. Why? You already killed me. This? He gestured at his ruined body. This is just momentum. I'm dead. I just haven't stopped moving yet. He lifted the sphere. But before I go, I want to see it. I want to see Casimir's perfect kingdom turn to dust. He pressed something on the device. It hummed. The sound wasn't noise. It was frequency, vibration, something that resonated with the energy inside her. Seraphine screamed. The device was a lure, a fishing hook sunk into the cosmic power inside her, dragging it out. The void expanded, ripped through the Seraphine's shell. Reality tore. The sky above cracked open wider, revealing not stars but absolute nothingness. She fell to her knees. The stone beneath her turned to sand, then to nothing, just empty space held together by habit. Feed! Vincent's voice was ecstatic, mad. Take it all! Make it all stop! The world was ending, and she couldn't stop it. Move! The word was quiet, calm, completely at odds with the apocalypse. Casimir stepped onto the platform. He looked terrible. His skin was mottled with bruises. His eyes were bloodshot. His movements were stiff, but his voice was steady. Vincent, you've made your point. Have I? Vincent's laugh was pure madness now. I think I'll make it a little clearer. He turned the dial on the sphere. The frequency increased. Seraphine's scream rose to match. The void inside her expanded faster, consuming her from the inside out. Casimir didn't run to her, didn't charge Vincent. He simply walked, steady, inevitable. Vincent's face twisted. Stay back, or I'll... Casimir's hand shot out, faster than thought, crushed Vincent's wrist. The sphere fell, hit the stone, shattered. The feedback was instantaneous. The device exploded. Not fire, not force, just light. Pure energy released all at once. Vincent Blackwood, what was left of him, simply ceased to exist. Erased. Not even ash remained. The frequency died. But the damage was done. Seraphine was beyond speech, beyond thought. The void had expanded too far. She was more whole than person now, more absence than presence. The sky was ripping wider. The drain was pulling everything in. Reality itself was unraveling. Below, in the courtyard, people were screaming, running, trying to escape the impossible. Thane burst onto the platform, sword in hand, face set with terrible determination. My lord, step back. No. She's too far gone. If I strike now, the feedback will... I said no. Casimir turned, looked at his oldest friend, his most loyal soldier. I have lived 487 years, Thane. I have done terrible things. I have built kingdoms on bones. I have drunk the blood of innocence and called it justice. He looked back at Seraphine, at the void consuming her. But I will not kill her. Not again. Not ever. Then we all die. Perhaps. Casimir started walking, towards Seraphine, toward the maelstrom of gravity and void and cosmic hunger. Or perhaps there is another way. Thane lunged, tried to grab him, stop him. Casimir was faster, sidestepped, kept walking. My lord, you can't. Watch me. The wind was a hurricane now. It tore at his clothes, sliced his skin. The gravity was crushing. Each step felt like walking through concrete. But he reached her. Seraphine was on her knees. Her eyes were pure void. No recognition, no humanity, just hunger given terrible form. Casimir knelt in front of her, took her face in his hands. His bones creaked. The pressure was immense. He felt ribs crack, felt his spine compress, but he held on. Seraphine, his voice was barely audible over the roaring wind. Look at me. Nothing, she was gone, lost in the hunger. He tried again, louder, desperate. Sarah, please, I know you're in there. Still nothing. Behind him, Thane was screaming something, warning, threat, plea. It didn't matter. Casimir leaned in, close enough that his forehead touched hers. You're hungry, I understand. You've been hungry your whole life, for food, for warmth, for belonging. His voice cracked. But you're not hungry for power. That's not what you need. The void flickered, just slightly. You're hungry for connection, for someone to see you, really see you. Not as a weapon, not as a mistake, not as something to be fixed or controlled or hidden away. He pulled back, just enough to look into those void black eyes. You've been alone in a crowd your entire life. You hid in pantries because you didn't think you deserved a seat at the table. Gray surfaced, broke through the black, just for a moment. Recognition. I have lived for 487 years. Casimir's hands trembled against her face. I have 487 years of memory, of love, of loss, of grief, of joy I'd forgotten I could feel until I saw you eating garbage and protecting it like treasure. He grabbed her hands, the ones dissolving into void, placed them against his chest, right over where his heart had stopped beating 4 centuries ago. It is a dense meal, a heavy meal. Every moment I've lived, every person I've loved and lost, every sunrise I can't see anymore, every night that never ends. His eyes were wet, blood tears tracked down his face. Take it all, leave me nothing. Seraphine tried to pull away, horror breaking through the hunger. I'll kill you. Her voice was hers again. Young, terrified. Yes, I'll eat everything you are. I know. Then why? Because. He pressed her hands harder against his chest. When I look at you, I feel alive for the first time in 400 years. And if I have to die to give you a chance to live, really live, not just survive, then I die knowing I finally did something right. He leaned close, whispered against her ear, Eat me, Sarah. Not my life, my memories, my history, my time. Take all 487 years and let them fill the void. The hunger betrayed her. It latched onto him. She felt it happening, felt the connection form. But it was wrong. It wasn't draining his magic, wasn't taking his vitality. It was draining his past. She gasped. Suddenly, she wasn't on the spire. She was in a field of sunflowers. The sun was warm on her face, real sun, not the pale imitation she'd known. A hand held hers, warm, calloused, human. She looked, saw a woman, brown hair, kind eyes, laughing. Liana. The memory wasn't hers, but she felt it, lived it, felt the fierce, overwhelming love Casimir had felt. The scene shifted. Now she was holding a child. Tiny, perfect, eyes just opening. Gray eyes, Arya. The love was different, deeper, instinctive. The kind that would burn the world down to keep this small thing safe. The memory shifted again. Plague, fever, screaming, the copper taste of blood that wouldn't save them. The horror of watching them die, the agony of ending their suffering with his own hands. Then centuries, alone, sitting on a throne he'd never wanted, watching the sun rise through windows he couldn't look out of, feeling nothing, being nothing. Until a girl in a pantry, protecting garbage like it was treasure. The spark, the first real emotion in 400 years. Hope. As Seraphine drank his memories, the void inside her filled. But it didn't fill with destruction. Didn't fill with power. It filled with humanity, with love, with loss, with the terrible, beautiful weight of caring about something more than yourself. The blackness in her eyes shattered, like glass breaking from the inside. Gray surfaced, stayed, became permanent again. The connection broke. The feedback loop reversed. Vincent's shattered device had one piece left. One gear still spinning. It couldn't handle the energy reversal. It exploded. Properly this time. The blast vaporized what little remained of Vincent Blackwood, erased him from history itself. The silence that followed was profound. Seraphine collapsed. Her hands were her own again. Flesh, not void. Casimir fell beside her. But he looked wrong. The marble perfection of his skin was gone. Now it had texture, pores, fine lines radiating from his eyes. His hair was streaked with gray at the temples. Real gray. Mortal gray. And his skin, it was flushed, pink. The color of blood flowing beneath. He coughed, a wet rattling sound, then drew a breath. Not the shallow performative breath of a vampire. A desperate, shuddering gasp that filled lungs that hadn't truly expanded in 400 years. Seraphine pressed her ear to his chest and heard it. Thump, 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 weak, fluttering like a bird learning to fly, but real. His heart was beating. You're alive. Her voice was wonder, terror, disbelief. Casimir's eyes opened. They weren't red anymore. The crimson had faded to soft, muddy hazel. Human eyes, mortal eyes. He blinked, confused, looked up at the sky, at the moon, white, normal, beautiful. I'm cold. His voice was scratchy, raw. The hypnotic resonance was gone. Just a man's voice. Tired, amazed. He shivered. His teeth actually chattered. God, I haven't been cold since 1624. A smile touched his lips. Terrified, wondrous. Thane stumbled over, dropped to his knees. stared at his king, at the human in front of him. The curse. His voice was barely a whisper. You didn't just drain his magic. You drained the stasis. You ate the vampire right out of him. He looked at Seraphine, amber eyes wide. You restarted his time. Seraphine helped Casimir sit up. He was weak. His muscles had atrophied from centuries of relying on supernatural strength. She pulled him into her arms, shared her warmth. He clung to her, buried his face in her shoulder, and wept, not with grief, with sensory overload, with the overwhelming rush of feeling things again, the scratch of fabric, the bite of wind, the warmth of another body, being alive. And below them, across the kingdom, the change rippled outward. The sky healed. The jagged tear in reality knitted itself shut. Threads of gold and azure wove through the darkness. The eternal crimson clouds dissipated. For the first time in 1,000 years, the night sky was clear. Stars appeared, real stars, distant and cold and indifferent and perfect. In the courtyards below, vampires stepped into moonlight. They didn't burn, they screamed, but not in pain, in relief. They fell to their knees, vomited black bile. The accumulated darkness of centuries purged from their bodies. When they looked up, their eyes were human. Brown, blue, green, hazel, not red. The thralls, servants who'd stood like statues for decades, trapped in compulsion, blinked, woke, looked around in confusion, wondering why they wore uniforms from another century. The World Eater hadn't eaten the world. She'd eaten the rot, metabolized the curse, turned it into fuel. And when she'd fed that energy into Casimir, when she'd drained his memories instead of his life, she'd inadvertently reversed the vampirism. Not just his, everyone's. The curse was broken. Seraphine looked down at Casimir, at the man trembling in her arms, at the kingdom waking from a nightmare 400 years long, and felt the glow around her intensify. Her edges were blurring again, becoming less flesh, more photon. No. Thane saw it too. You're destabilizing. Seraphine stood. The movement was fluid, too fluid, like gravity had become optional. I can't stay. Her voice echoed, layered, not quite singular anymore. Casimir struggled to his feet. His human legs barely supported him. Thane caught him before he fell. Why? Casimir's voice broke. You saved us. You're the queen of this new age. They'll worship you. We can build. I'm full now. Seraphine looked at her hands. They were translucent, light shining in through. But I'm a battery that never stops charging. The sun is rising. She looked east. The first rays of dawn, real dawn, golden and pure, touched the horizon. And I resonate with it. If I stay, I'll burn you all just by existing. She stepped back, toward the edge of the precipice. I need to go somewhere I can burn without hurting anyone. Take me with you. Thane stepped forward, left Casimir swaying but standing. My watch has ended. I have no purpose here. No, Seraphine's smile was sad, kind. Your watch just began. He needs you. She pointed to Casimir, standing on wobbly legs, looking lost. He doesn't know how to shave without cutting his throat. He doesn't know how to pay taxes. He doesn't know how to de. Her voice softened. He needs a friend to walk him to the end. Thane's jaw clenched, but he nodded, stepped back to Casimir's side. Seraphine looked up at the stars. They were fading. The sun was winning. There's a lot of empty space up there, a lot of dark places that need light. She smiled. It was blinding. I think I'll see what's on the menu. She reached into her pocket. The velvet dress had survived everything. And in the pocket, miraculously, the melted locket remained, just slag now, dead metal. But it had been important once. She pressed it into Casimir's hand, his warm human hand. Keep this, as a leftover. Casimir's fingers closed around it. Sarah, I'll come back. She cut him off gently. When I learn to control it, when I figure out how to be full without destroying everything, I'll come back. How long? I don't know. Years, decades, maybe centuries. She looked at him, really looked. To see your eyes again. What's a few to see your eyes again? What's a few more? Seraphine didn't fly, didn't launch. She simply unfolded. One moment she was a girl in a black velvet dress. The next she was a beam of pure, intelligent light. She shot upward, pierced the atmosphere, a second sun rising in the west. As she left, the true sun crested the eastern horizon. Golden, warm, gentle. It bathed the healing kingdom in the promise of tomorrow. Casimir stood on the spire, watching the sky, clutching the melted locket. Thane stood beside him. Two men, one learning to be mortal again, one who'd been mortal for too long. Together, they watched the dawn, the first true dawn in 1,000 years. 6 months later, the kingdom was called the Dawn Realm now, ruled by a council of mortals elected by the people. Democracy was messy, loud, inefficient. Casimir loved it. He ran a small bakery in what used to be called the Lower Ward. Now it was just Market Street. The sign above the door read, "The Bruised Pear." He sold bread, day-old bread at a discount for people who couldn't afford fresh, pastries that didn't turn out quite right, coffee that was just okay. It was the best thing he'd ever done. He was terrible at it. Burned things, forgot ingredients, confused orders. But the people who came, the ones who'd once been invisible, the ones who'd scraped by on leftovers and hope, they didn't care. They saw themselves in the old man with kind hazel eyes who remembered what hunger felt like. Thane helped, grumbled about flour prices, complained about the early hours, but he was always there, dependable, loyal, learning to be a friend instead of a soldier. Every week on the anniversary of the dawn, Casimir closed the bakery early. He walked to the park, sat on a specific bench beneath an old willow tree, and ate a pheasant leg, fully cooked, perfectly seasoned. Thane always joined him, bringing coffee that was too bitter and pastries that were too sweet. They didn't talk much, just sat, watching the sky. Today was the 6-month anniversary. Casimir was 70 now. At least, his body looked 70. He'd aged 6 months worth in 6 months, making up for lost time. His hair was fully gray. His hands shook sometimes. His knees ached when it rained. He'd never been happier. "Do you think she's okay?" Thane asked the question he asked every week. Casimir looked up at the sky, at the clouds drifting lazily across blue. "Yes." "How can you be sure?" "Because," Casimir smiled, "when the sun hits the spire just right, every morning at dawn, the light doesn't just warm you, it speaks." Thane was quiet then. "What does it say?" "Not yet, still learning, but I'm full. And I remember you." They sat in comfortable silence, two old men watching clouds. Behind them, the city bustled. Mortals going about mortal lives, building, creating, living without fear. In the distance, the Nightborn Citadel still stood, but the throne room was empty now. The crown sat in a museum, a reminder of what they'd survived. A child ran past their bench, laughing, chasing a butterfly. Casimir watched her, smiled, remembered a girl in a pantry, protecting garbage like treasure, remembered teaching her that she was worth more than leftovers, remembered her teaching him that being alive meant feeling everything, the pain and the joy, the cold and the warmth. That night, alone in the small apartment above the bakery, Casimir stood at the window, looked up at the stars, and whispered, "I'm still here, still waiting. Take all the time you need." The stars didn't answer. But one of them, just one, in the constellation he didn't recognize, seemed to pulse, just slightly, just enough, like a heartbeat made of light. And Casimir smiled, because he knew she was out there, learning, growing, becoming something that could hold all that power without being consumed by it. And when she was ready, she'd come home, to a kingdom that had learned to see the invisible, to a world that valued the hungry and the lost and the ones eating leftovers in the dark. To a man who'd learned that the greatest love wasn't possession, it was letting go, and trusting that what's meant to return will. He closed the curtain, climbed into bed. His human body ached. Tomorrow he'd burn the croissants again. Thane would complain. The customers would laugh. It would be ordinary, mundane, beautiful. He fell asleep smiling and dreamed of sunflower fields and daughters laughing and a girl with gray eyes who taught a king how to be human. They said she was a weapon, a mistake, an abomination forged in grief and desperation. But she was salvation. She ate their curse and gave them back their humanity. She taught them that hunger isn't weakness. It's proof you're still fighting to survive. And somewhere in the vast dark between stars, she's still out there, still learning, still protecting leftovers like treasure. Because some truths never change. You're never too broken to be whole, never too hungry to be full, never too lost to find your way home. And love, real love, doesn't cage what it cherishes. It gives it wings, even if that means watching it fly away. Trusting it will return when the time is right, when the hunger is finally, truly satisfied, and the eclipse remembers how to be the sun.